Hello and welcome. We're going to be covering orc flesh today, and I think there are a couple of considerations that you can think about and a couple of general rules that you can follow, and whether you're going to follow this tutorial or this recipe, or you're just going to use a normal recipe for painting orc flesh, these tips are going to help you do it better and understand the nuances of painting green a little bit better at a very basic level. So the things that you should hold in mind are, do you want your orc flesh to be dark and light? Do you want it to be colourful or drab? I'll explain more on the drab later because people think that's bad, but it's not. And it's more common than you'd think, even on ones that look colourful. A lot of the time, there's some very interesting highlight colours used. And do you want interesting shadows? On screen now are some interesting shadows. Something I would like you to be aware of, if you aren't already, is that as orcs or grots or anything greenskin gets bigger, which does make it better, we all know, according to the lore as well, the colours change. So what you tend to find is, in let's say like Games Workshop terms, this is going to be kind of like your baby orcs, this type of colour, or your grots or whatever. As they get bigger and more interesting, you tend to get kind of a wider variety of colours used within them, and the shadows especially are really worth paying attention to. Now, on all of the recent Games Workshop ones, there is a small amount of interesting stuff going on in the shadows, but as the faces get bigger and craggier and more characterful, especially then, insane hollow cheekbones showing on screen now, you see that there's really some interesting stuff going on. So what we're going to do is, I've got these three arms here, and I'm going to show you different ways to approach orc flesh. And with this knowledge, you'll be able to improve your recipe or follow the recipes we've got here. I'll make it very generic, so it doesn't matter what brand you're using. I'll talk in terms of our colours and Games Workshop colours though, because GW are the most common, and I understand ours very well at this point. So let's jump in. Orc arm number one. Now, first things first, before we even put paint on the model, I spent too long recording my intro a couple of times. Right, it is going to be easier to achieve certain colours if we do not go over a black base coat. We've got to do that as the very first step. So I've put a grey down. We've got a bright orc skin tutorial. I'm not going to do exactly that method, but if you do really like how that looks, I'll link this tutorial after this one. It's a very good one for, I think, like the middle version of orc skin. Quite bright, interesting shadows. We're going to have to start from a lighter base coat though. So this is, for these ones, going to give us a basis where our colour will work without it just being a fight, okay? And we won't dull them down by using a paint that's actually got quite a lot of white in it. And we'll start from a really bright base and we'll work onwards from there. You can see I've got three different squares on the table. Gonna pop my Blood Angel tests. Up here we've prepped up an arm as well with a very light grey base coat. But I'm gonna show you how much of a difference just your undercoat can make. You can use grace here or something like this to help you achieve that, whatever method you like. I've literally done it by hand. It took 2 coats. It wasn't so bad. All right, weapon of choice. Ooh, naughty, should have cleaned that. All right, I'm gonna be using I've always got 2 size 4s on the go. I'm gonna be using my older one. Still pointy enough. Had plenty of use and abuse though. You can see it's got some slight discoloration at the bottom, but this is my favorite brush for this type of task. Right, we got a couple of different greens here. You can use moot in GW terms. I'm going to use ours though. I'm not going to dilute it too much. What you'll notice is if you want to get a paint like this to cover, this is a highlighting colour. So it's going to be tricky to get it to do one coat coverage. As you go over lighter bases, it's going to be easier and easier. And this is one of those things that people, you see a bright color and you reach for it. Part of what makes this bright and colorful is that it's a very pure green. It's not got stuff in to make it cover better like these do. And I'll show you the difference when you're using a coverage-based green after this. And I'll just use that over black and you'll see how much of a difference it makes. All right, but as we go for white, with my very careful and technical application, what we notice is that it's almost going in one. And my God, is it a light color too? So the fact that it's semi-transparent or more transparent than something like this means that whatever's underneath it is going to affect it more. Now it's good or bad, depending on the situation. We can work with it, but it is a fantastic starting base if you want to wash down and make your bright starting color more deep and cool and interesting with all over processes like washes or contrast paints or something like that. I'll do a quick second coat and then we'll be ready to show you exactly what I mean. Over the white, we should pretty much get it in the second coat. Now, your skin on your orcs is going to be a large part of the model. So even if it's a couple of steps, working out the best way to get the best looking green is in the long term going to help you, because that green is going to carry the model. Whether it's good or bad, that is going to be, you know, so on some models like Gretchen or whatever, this could be 80 or 90% of the model. You've got to get it right. Hopefully the difference is showing up nicely between those three greens now. If we mix badass color with badass coverage and still an interesting color, what's going to happen? Yes, it was an excuse to get gherkin out. Okay, so we take a little bit of gherkin and we mix it in. And what we get then is almost one coat coverage, even though it's still got a lot of our light green in, and a super interesting color, and it's still pretty light. I'll show what gherkin would do on its own because it's kind of crazy. Yeah. Okay. Over black, doesn't care. Badass. So if your skin color happens to start from something like this, it'll give you an easy go. If you want it to start bright, just mix a little bit of something else in and or go over a lighter base coat. For reference, let's pop down a really drab green that should have amazing coverage to base. There you go. But you'd have a lot of work to highlight that up. A lot. You'd have to use something with good coverage like this, or you know, you'd end up kind of trapped in the middle ground. And therefore, again, mixing, understanding the properties of your paint is your route to power. And if you're doing an army, you can make a 50-50 mix of this and this, and you've got the same color ready to go, exactly same hues and tones and lightness and brightness if needed, you know, super conveniently. It's always worth making up a custom batch. If you are very worried about consistency, people have got different skin colors, whether they're from the same place or not. And I think orcs would have different skin colors too, so I'm fine with a bit of internal variation. Let's get on to arm number one. So arm number one, such a cool color. A little bit too dilute, there's too much water in that, but I'll get the first coat down, and then we'll pop down a second. This one's gonna look amazing. Another thing you can play with if you're using the lighter colors with less coverage is you can just use them a bit thicker, especially on your base coat. The main rule, and we have a very good video about this, base coating cloaks, where I got some stick, but I'll stand by it. You can use thicker paint, especially on large, smooth areas, as long as that paint is never touching other paint that's started drying. You want to be wet on wet or wet on dry, but never wet on drying. And if you have just hair dried your piece, make sure you let it dry, cool down 100%, because that is a common root of problems too. That green is just so good that you could almost stop there. Like, we are already going in a very good direction because of the quality of that color. So you should always be willing to do a mix. It'll be worth it. Like if your army is orcs, it's worth getting the skin right. If you get the skin and the leather right, all you've got to do is nail metallics, put some red on it, and you'll be absolutely good to go. So next step. Now, in the tutorial that I've already mentioned, we used Coelia, which is a really, really lovely color. And I have huge, I adore this color. It's absolutely amazing. So if you want to see the kind of bluey, shadowy effect that you can get, we've got a tutorial for that already. We go in a slightly different direction for our first of our arms in this tutorial though. So what shade is almost or as good as Coelia green shade? You guessed it, it's Athenian. Now Athenian is amazing. It is the tiniest bit dirty, so you need to exercise some care when you're using this over a light base. Otherwise you'll end up kind of browning and dirtying out your skin more than you want. I'm going to be using Lamian medium. Do not, I repeat, do not substitute in contrast medium. I've made that mistake recently. They are not the same thing at all. As normal, it is always a good idea to test. That's why we're using a texture palette. This makes it convenient for us to do good, useful things that stop us from making horrible errors that we then can't fix, which is what I should have done recently when using contrast medium by accident. You live and learn. Right, and we can just pop it down. Yeah. Lovely. Could pop it down over our colors in question. I think this should work really well. It's going to slightly drab it out, make it a bit stronger. You could actually go for a mix. Again, this is why we test what happens if we mix two of the best shades in Citadel's range. Ooh. That's pretty good. It's quite dark. I think I would save that for a second step. Or you could do it selectively as an initial step. What I'm going to do though is I'll just go for 50-50 Lamian and Athonian. You could, if you wanted, mix your darker color from your base coat in here, but I don't think that's necessary. Final test again. Here we go. As ever, when you're using a shade, be careful and steady with the application. Work one section at a time and kind of keep the orientation of your piece fixed. So don't change which way is down as you're working. And carefully deposit in some areas where I want there to be extra shading. Leave it, probably don't hair dry it, be patient, and we'll return shortly. All right, just stop there, guys. It looks great. No, we're not stopping there, but if you're in a rush, you absolutely could. And if you want to kind of knock the color down a bit more, you could add in a little bit of brown into this mix rather than the bluey green that we're going to be making between the two. We'll be making this. So what I'm going to do is still dilute and remove a lot of the excess. And I'm going to selectively dab this inside any of the deeper areas. It's up to you where you want these to be. If you go too heavy, just do what I did there and quickly kind of mop up the edges and that'll soften them. I haven't particularly thought about this. I've enhanced what was already there, and that's kind of, it's the efficient way. There we go. Super speedy. And if you want any that you really want to push, still using the big brush, but I'm just using the very tip of it now, and there's a lot less in there. It's not going to flood anywhere. Pretty much neat too. Just poking it in there, and I'm ending my stroke where I want the most. Not even a stroke, it's just a little specific jabbing. Cool. How much has that added? Absolutely massive. You're only going inside areas you've already done with this. No new territory, it'll just look out of place. He says and breaks his own rule. I missed out the elbow. There we go. Just don't forget anywhere and then do what I said, not what I did. Cool. These little bits add a lot. Time to repeat our base coat. Up to you. If you wanted to save a step, you could only use the brighter of the colors. Just use it a bit thinner. However, I think it's probably the safest just to mix up pretty much the same as we started with. All close. Just checking out my palette there. And then just towards the top. Again, what we did with the washes, we're doing with the highlights, but in the opposite places. So the area that I want it to be the brightest rather than the darkest, I'm just leaving my paint there. Nice big brush. I should probably manage to do this all in one go. Don't forget your biceps. All important. And if you want it stronger, you can just repeat it. I think that looks great. That looks really, really, really solid. It's not too many steps. They're all controllable. It's hard to go wrong. If you flood too much with your wash, you can fix it with the repeated base coat. just the best. If you want to be more fancy, you just, you can take more time within the steps we've got. So if you want to suggest like the tendons of muscles, you can drag some lines into there, but it's up to you, whatever fits. And obviously if it's a general, you could just spend a little bit more time, a bit more care, or wash deeper. Okay, so what if you do want to layer up from black, from your darker colors? Like I said, it's just going to be important to make the right choices in terms of what follows your base coat. So we'll start from something closest to Castellan. This is Fern. See, it's just a little bit more kind of colorful than Castellan is. Mix them together though, we'll get a middle ground. Right, this should base coat in one kind of beautifully. Maybe I'll need to. I think actually Castellan's not got as fantastic base coating as I thought. Anyway, we'll do a couple coats of this and we'll be good to go from our darker, more drab base than last time. As is always the case, the second coat makes a big difference. This is a lot more drab. It's very camouflage base, which makes sense. Now, there will be a temptation to reach for something like warpstone at this point. However, if you do that and you cover too much or use too much of this in your mix, you're going to go from what looks like kind of serious, mean, evil, not cartoony orcs to cartoony orcs. And if you're going for cartoony orcs, cool. We did one previously, but for this one, we're not going for that type of a vibe. So again, you want to lean into something that's got a little bit more interest to it, maybe a bit more white inside there as well. So it won't be as colorful, and that will really help. You can get color elsewhere on orcs. So, they could have red things on them always, or yellow, or very shiny metallics. But if you're going for a serious, scary orc skin, it's a really good idea to kind of skip out or minimize the amount of the middle color you've got. If you want to be really interesting, you've also got colors like Sons of Horus Green, which is a blue-green. So especially as I've got a black backdrop here, these are going to look much whiter in comparison, but I'm going to reach for cabbage. You could reach for Skarsnik or an equivalent like that. It's a more dull one, but whatever you do, we're going to be mixing it into our base coat. This is old school, add new color to previous color, layering style painting. You're going to add less than you think and cover more than you think. So the aim here is to cover 80% of the area that you've just base coated. You're trying to leave the recesses. And again, we're going to work fast, and we're just trying to leave recesses. So the way that I'll go first is the areas I'm certain about, I'm just going to put a great big blob down in the middle, let it dry fully, don't be impatient. And then when we come around for a second pass, once we've formed a judgment on how the first pass went, then maybe we'll be, you can be more confident with your placement. And we're just building up the opacity by putting down a second coat. See there, I didn't join these two sections together in the first go, but having looked at it, I thought it looked a bit weird. It looked like, I don't know, like a load of pears next to each other or something, given the color that it is. So here in the second pass, this is when I make those decisions. And rather than thinking about them from the beginning based on guesswork, I think about them on the second pass based on my observations. Again, another illustration of that. So this is going to be the top of his arm. I painted those as separate sections, but I'm just going to join them together. Top of his shoulder muscle, I'm going to treat all as one big one. And it's with this type of thinking that you can refine our highlights without having to struggle from the very beginning. Just minimize the amount of time you spend thinking and maximize the amount of time that you spend doing. It's much easier to remember less little things rather than constantly trying to work stuff out. So that went way faster than you'd think. And I really encourage you to, especially on very, doesn't have to be on muscles, but on models that have got really strong shapes, because these are very exaggerated. That's a very good way to learn, improve as a painter. Now I'm going to take pure cabbage, or Skarsnik if you're using GW. Add in the tiniest bit of our previous color, but it's just like, that's because it'll just make our painting look smoother. You're not trying to make a big difference to the color. I've got quite a bit of water in my brush with it being a big brush too. And then having learned in the previous step, just going to think about hitting the tops of our areas. Do some lines if you want. And this will make quite a big difference. Don't have to do it in one go. In fact, it might genuinely be faster and easier to do it in a couple of goes. Whether it was a single piece on an egg or a model, make sure, that's why the eggs are wonderful, make sure you're turning it around to make it as easy as possible to approach from the angle that you need. And just build it up over a couple of steps. Make sure you let it dry fully between each. Some live testing. So we've got this burnt orange. That would make this type of a highlight color. Try out Deathclaw brown. Which is so much more orangey than you think. But I think that might be quite cool. Or use much paler cool green. This one's got a bit more white in it, so it'll be quite strong. Need to be quite careful, but mixing it with a previous one that does make things more forgiving. It won't need much to make a difference either. Cool, okay. And then start off in the small areas where you definitely know where you want things. And then advance to bigger areas. Might only need one pass for this, it's up to you. However strong you want, however noticeable. You could kind of suggest muscle patterns with this step if you want. It's much easier once you've got a stronger paint on the go. There we go. So let's have a look at how different they are going to look next to each other. Worlds apart. All right, so we've done modern-ish, starting from a light base coat, old school, starting from a dark base, so we're going to go for ultra modern, ultra weird, so I'm going to paint this purple. Cool. I think that is the one. Always feels a bit weird at first. Obviously, this is a very unusual color combination. Clean the majority of that out of my brush. See, not much is coming off at the side. It'll still turn your first yellow orange. That's cool. If you have veins or something on the muscles on your arm, this will look particularly good on them. Carefully with the last step. It's already cool. Wait until we turn it green. Now, very importantly, I need to get this mix right. So I'm just going to prepare somewhere on my palette that looks as close as possible to what we've got going on. Nice big area in case we need a few attempts. Onion. Very shaken mantis warriors. Such a cool color. A little bit of old flesh. Better to know before you go to model, right? And then work quick. Should be able to get there in 2 coats. Mop up excess pulling a little, but it's fine to have it in the right areas. So try and deposit them there on purpose. Probably I didn't need to use as much lamian. There we go. That's done what we were after. Of course, over an army, you'll get a better idea and a better feeling for this. Okay, so this has made a really cool color. And the learnings that we've applied from this green and previous greens, we know that orange and pale yellows look kind of cool with them, so using that underneath works really well. And we know that this works well as a highlighting color, or this type of color does. So what I'm going to do is string it out with water a lot. You can mix some of your contrast mix in there if you wanted, just as we have done around here with our previous one. That will increase coherency. It's up to you. And then highlight those areas. I'm going to retain what we've left in the recesses. One of the nice things about this is if you've got big monsters in there, which is more common now in orcs, or very, very large things, you can use the contrast on hyper-textured big models. Now, we've used it with great effect in the past on dragons, bloodthirsters, stuff like that. The bigger your model is, or the more angular it is, the nicer it is to have this as an option. And if you have the combo, then you can fix the mistakes of one with the strengths of the other. You know, you could paint your orcs with moot green and then shade them with similar contrast colors. We're just popping our highlights back in. Same as we did with the previous ones. First time as a guide, second time with more confidence. Then with care, it's much lighter and brighter, but again, you can suggest muscles. With a step if you want. Probably could drop down a brush size here, but I'm very used to my big one. There's not as much paint in it as I would want. And that can result in it pulling apart a little, but at the same time, my biggest risk is flooding, and I'm actually using the shape of the very, very tip of it to make it easier for me to paint those muscles. You will get paint drying on that tip more than anywhere else, so just something you've got to be aware of. The best fix is to work fast. Now, I don't really know how to say this, so I'm just going to say it and take it for what it is, but the thumbnail for this video may be put on someone's TV. This is tiny. This is a 1.5 centimeter orc arm. This is absolutely good enough for army painting, and also, let's be blunt, if you are painting an army, I don't know the number of boys that is normal in an army, but let's hazard a guess that it's at least 2 units of 15. You're going to have 60 of these arms to paint and the rest of the orc, so this level is completely fine and would look amazing on the tabletop. If, however, you want to know how to go further, I'm going to show you a shading step, and I'll give you a couple of rules to follow so you can apply it to whatever color of orc arm you've got. This is optional. You could just do it on your heroes or your leaders, on the big guys like I was talking about earlier. I'm going to make it nice and easy for you. But yeah, like, you know, you could have 3 units of 30 boys. That is a lot of arms. That is 180 arms. think carefully. This would look amazing if you put it next to well-painted metal and well-painted leather that were both at a basic level on well-done bases, faces, and shields. You know the rules. So if you want to go further, and we're going to do it nice and efficiently, you're going to have some absolute winners of colors. You can have something like this. If you are brave, you could use something like this. And Rista, he's probably going to have a color like this in the shadows on his arm that has warm yellow-green highlights. He will have cool blue-green, even straight to blue shadows. He is also dialing everything up to 11 and spending longer per miniature than we probably would. But you can go in this direction. Let's show you the shade though. There's a note that this is an old shade of mine, and shades and contrasts evaporate and thicken and concentrate way more than you would think. So that is something that you should be mindful of. Therefore, I'm going to dilute it more. I'm testing in a light area of my palette. I'm also going to start off using it in a safe place on my mini, which is on the underside, just in case it's a bit too much. It's not. We've already done control all over this model where we pushed for the raised areas or pushed for the recesses. So I'm just going to go to the most recessed areas, and we're going to carefully start introducing this. Again, on your second pass, you can be more brave if you want, but we're going to save our bravery for when we've got confidence rather than hope. There's no place for hope in painting, or very rarely is there place for hope in painting. And this is going to bring a lot of life instantly to our arm. You could, you can be braver if you want, but we could just go pretty fast, pretty loose, and decide after a first pass if that was a bad idea. If it was, don't do it again. If it was a good idea, maybe you can do it again and be a little bit braver. Don't overcomplicate this stuff. You're better to just start in a sensible manner rather than worrying. It's life lessons. Like, the motivation will come after the movement, not before. See, we've added quite a lot there. That looks way more alive, like almost magically so. Second round. My ancient 000 is coming in so useful here. It's still completely straight, but over time it's lost its pointy tip, and that means that it puts down quite a bit of paint, considering the size of the brush, but in exactly the place that you want it, which is what you want from a pointy brush. Always think of your brushes as having a life cycle, and once they get old, that doesn't mean they're useless, far from it. Some of my favorite brushes are my oldest brushes, and they can't do pointy anymore. Like painting eyes necessarily, but they can still do a lot of tasks. They can do some better than they ever could. Look at that. Huge. What a difference we have made to that now. Sparingly. We could also use a pinky purple, because we've already got that type of color in there. But if you were looking to go nuts, put it on a palette. Don't guess how it's going to look. Observe. Then we could put it all at the bottom of the muscles. Again, it's optional. This arm looked great and was great. You can add more if you wish. This one's really taken on such a life after that. And then we'll try a reddy brown in this one, and I'll use a paint rather than a shade. You could mix a little bit of corn red in with word bearers. I'm using our sangria, which is a particularly beloved color of mine. Now that's going to look a bit nuts, so we might be in mixing our base color stage here, but we'll see what we can do with dilution. Maybe just about okay. And sparingly, getting the right angle. I wish that these arms had a vein on, because you'd push this up against both sides of the vein, and it'd really help suggest that it was, you know, had blood running through it. Well, I guess orc blood isn't. Even if it's not red, that would still work visually. What color is orc blood? That's just below. There we go. Those little bits, they just add so much. All right, and what if you want to be super fancy? What if you want to add a vein? So again, completely optional, but we've got a good spot for it. Being here, an area that sticks out on the outside of the forearm where there would be a vein as well. So, you know, realism is important. It goes through a dark section and a light section, which I think should help. So let's get not our oldest small brush, let's get our newest fancy small brush and let's give it a go. I'd recommend working from a reference. You could do a little drawing and you're, you know, to the side of your working area. Follow that. And it's weird that I'm gonna say this, but if you build up a little bit of physical texture, it wouldn't actually matter too much. You want to put a wiggle in there, and you could have it branch off if you want. It's got to stop at some point, so be aware of that. Whatever our shadow or shade color was, now I'm going to take that, we're going to remove loads of it, and we're going to push it to the underside of our vein. Try and do it in a smaller place as possible, and then I've just licked my brush. I'm going to remove it from the underneath area because I went a bit too far into the muscle. Take our shade color, mix it with a little bit of red. Turquoise is so strong, we're going to need to sort out our ratios. Dab, dab, dab. And we are done. I'll do a little bit on the top side. Hopefully you found this useful. I do think that the highlighting tip we gave of going once softly and then going with a bit more confidence once you've learned from observation is huge. It's something I'm going to be pushing more going forwards. Let us know what you would like to see next down below in the comments. Give us your suggestions. Is it painting a normal orc? Is it speed painting an orc? Let us know whatever would be the most useful. Doesn't have to be an orc, doesn't even have to be Armageddon anymore. We're nearly past that point now. Maybe it's back to Ultramarines. Who knows? Thank you very much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.